You have been staring at the menu for 20 minutes, and you are hungrier than when you sat down. You have read every dish twice, narrowed 2 options down to 4, and over the last 10 minutes your ability to think has been slowly replaced by the ability to reread the same line about roasted carrots. The more options you are given, the less likely you are to order any of them, and a famous experiment with jars of jam in a California grocery store showed that this is a reflex, not a character flaw. Finally, you close the menu and say the sentence you swore you would not say. You will just have the usual. That feeling, the one where abundance turns into paralysis, has a name. Psychologists call it choice overload, and the jam study was the experiment that made the phenomenon visible. In 2000, Sheena Iyengar and Mark Lepper set up a tasting table inside Draeger's, a high-end supermarket in Menlo Park, California. On some days, the table displayed 24 varieties of jam. On other days, it displayed 6. Shoppers could taste as many as they wanted. The setup was identical in every other way. Same table, same staff, same jams, just a different number of jars. Iyengar and Lepper counted how many people stopped and whether they bought anything. Here is what they found. Around 60% of passers-by stopped at the large display, compared with about 40% at the small one. The crowd voted for abundance. The buyers did the opposite. Of the people who stopped at the 6-jam table, roughly 1 in 3 bought a jar. Of the people who stopped at the 24-jam table, roughly 1 in 30 bought anything at all. More attention, 10 times fewer sales. The larger selection made the product more attractive to browse and less attractive to own. That split should feel familiar. You love scrolling the catalog. You hate pressing buy. Why would more freedom make the actual decision harder? The first part of the answer is working memory, the mental notepad your brain uses to hold and compare information. Psychologist Nelson Cowan measured its capacity at about 4 items at a time. 6 flavors of jam is a squeeze, but your brain can just about hold them. 24 is not a comparison anymore. It is a room full of objects with no map. When the set exceeds working memory, a quiet collapse happens. You stop comparing the options and start comparing the losses. Every unopened jar becomes a potential regret. The blackcurrant you did not taste might have been perfect. The 3-fruit marmalade you dismissed could have been the one. Anticipated regret is a genuine cost, and every extra option adds another chance to feel it. The brain is not lazy. It is trying to avoid a loss it can already imagine. The second part of the answer is a personality split that psychologist Barry Schwartz documented in The Paradox of Choice. Maximizers, in his terms, want the best possible outcome. Satisficers want good enough, and they stop when they find it. On a short menu, the 2 types look identical. On a long menu, they diverge completely. A maximizer reads every option because the one dish they skip might be the definitive version of dinner. Every new option raises the ceiling on what best could mean, so the search expands to fill the menu. Schwartz found that maximizers report more anxiety, more regret, and less satisfaction with their choices, even when independent judges rate those choices as better than what satisficers pick. The pursuit of the best poisons the experience of the good. Now step back and ask whether this reflex ever made sense. It did. Your ancestors decided over small sets. A few edible plants, a handful of hunting routes, a small circle of people. The decision machinery in your head evolved for those conditions, where one glance covered the entire space of options. Abundance is historically new. A modern grocery store carries tens of thousands of items. A streaming service offers thousands of titles. A dating app can present 100 faces in a single evening. The environment changed, and the brain did not. A system built for scarcity is now asked to run a task closer to a spreadsheet than a hunt, and the freeze is its honest report that the job exceeds its design. You are not broken. You are running old hardware on a new workload. You might argue that jam is trivial, and freezing over dessert means nothing when the stakes are real. So look at retirement savings. In 2004, Iyengar and her colleagues studied the 401(k) plans of roughly 800,000 American employees. The plans varied in how many investment funds they offered, from a couple to more than 50. The pattern matched the jam aisle. Every additional 10 funds cut participation by about 2 percentage points. Employees offered a handful of funds signed up at solid rates. Employees offered a long list of funds, often signed up for none at all. They did not pick a worse plan. They picked silence. Decades of savings lost not to risk, but to the number of options on the form. The original jam paper contained another clue. In a third experiment, college students chose an essay topic from a list of either 6 or 30 options. The students who chose from the short list wrote better essays and reported more satisfaction. The students with 30 topics produced worse work and enjoyed it less. Same effort, same assignment, worse result. This is the central fact of the jam trap. The cost of choosing is paid in attention long before it is paid in action. Every extra option spends a little of your focus, and focus is a budget that runs out. By the time you reach the decision itself, you may be too depleted to make it. The menu has already taken its fee before you point at a single dish. Now for the honest complication. If choice overload were a law of psychology, it should show up in every study. It does not. In 2010, researchers pooled the results of about 50 experiments on the topic, and the average effect was close to 0. That sounds like a refutation, but the authors concluded something more interesting. Choice overload is real and conditional. It appears when the options are unfamiliar, when they are hard to rank, when the decision is difficult, and when people expect to be held accountable for the outcome. It disappears when people arrive with clear preferences. The jam test had near-perfect conditions. Most shoppers had no strong jam opinions, no way to compare 24 varieties of a product they bought twice a year, and no practice. Beginners faced a professional's decision and froze. That last condition explains why experts never seem to hit the trap. A sommelier does not evaluate a wine list of 300 bottles one by one. They filter: region, grape, vintage, price. A few quick passes and the list collapses to a single candidate. The filter does the heavy lifting before the comparison starts. The novice has no filter, so the entire list must be held in mind at once, and the mind cannot. This is the hidden variable in every version of the jam trap. Abundance is only paralyzing when you arrive without a method. Give the same brain a rule, even an arbitrary one, and the wall of options turns back into a list. The rule shrinks the set, and a shrunk set is a set the brain can actually process. Which brings us back to the person at the table with the menu, and to every version of that person you have met in yourself. Chronic indecision is usually treated as a character flaw, a lack of will, a failure of commitment. The research says otherwise. The freeze is a normal output of a system handed more inputs than it can hold. Working memory has about 4 slots, and a 24-item menu is asking you to compare across all of them at once. The first useful reaction to indecision is not self-criticism. It is to shrink the set on purpose. Pick a price range before you look. Dismiss the entire second page. Decide that the first option clearing a simple bar is the one. The brain does not need the best option. It needs a filter, and you can supply one in seconds. There is a colder logic underneath the freeze as well. The difference between the best option and the second best usually shrinks as the set grows. Any 24-item menu contains a few excellent dishes, and they are probably close enough that the gap between first and third is taste, not quality. But comparing all 24 costs real time, real attention, and real mental energy. At some point, the expected gain from finding a marginally better option is smaller than the cost of looking for it. Your brain rarely runs this calculation consciously, but its refusal to choose is a verdict from somewhere inside you. The audit came back negative. The search is no longer worth its price. The deeper problem is the promise attached to all these options. Choice is sold as freedom, and freedom is good. But freedom has a processing cost, and abundance can exceed the budget. A shelf of 24 jams is not more freedom than a shelf of 6 if you cannot decide among the 24. The jam trap reveals something uncomfortable about modern abundance. All those options do not only offer more chances to get what you want, they also hand you more ways to miss it, more futures you will never live, more meals you will never eat. The awareness of what you are losing is part of the price of entry, and the brain, trying to hold all those lost futures, simply stops moving. So the next time you find yourself at the 20-minute mark, remember how the experiment ended. The people with 6 jams walked to the register with a jar in hand. The people with 24 walked out hungry, and they were the ones who had come to taste. A menu with 1,000 options is not a gift. It is a demand. You are allowed to decline it. You are allowed to order the second dish you saw and mean it. The brain that freezes is not a brain that failed. It is a brain that counted the cost and refused to overpay. Turn the page, pick something, walk away full.